In this Go Byte, we're going to have a look at something called the blank identifier. Now in Go, if you declare a variable, you have to use it, otherwise the compiler will throw an error. But what if you have variables that you don't actually want to use? In those scenarios, you can use the blank identifier. And so that's what we're going to have a look at in this one, as well as some use cases. So let's think about some of those use cases for a start. Think about things when you have functions that might return more than one value, but there's only one value that you're interested in or that you intend to use. Then you can use the blank identifier. Then when you loop over things, the range function, for example, when you're looping, will produce two values. One will be the index and one will be the actual value, that item in a slice or an array. For those things, then you might not want to use the index or you might not want to use the value. So in that case, you can just use a blank identifier. So this will make more sense when we actually have some practical examples. So let me show you what I mean by the unused return values first. So let's say, for example, we've declared a function and this returns two strings. And so here, as you can see, it's just a daft example, but here we're returning two strings, foo and bar. So these are separated by a comma. This is how you return more than one value from a function. What if you only wanted to reuse one of these values when you called the function? So if we call it, it's going to return two values. So if we were to store those in variables, we'll do something like this. Can't remember what I call this, some function. But then you might only want to sort of do something with one of those, which we're doing here. But like I say, if you have a variable in Go and you don't do anything with it, you'll get compile errors. But I have no intention, there's nothing I want to do with this foo variable, with this first value which is returned from this function. So in that scenario, we can use the blank identifier. And that simply looks like this, just an underscore. And so here we're telling Go, we have no intentions for this value, please ignore it, we're not going to do anything with it. And then we can just go ahead and print out the value for the variables that we want, or do whatever we want to do with the variables that we want to use. So let's, before we go any further, let's just run this just to prove that it does compile. Go run main.go, and so there we go. We print out the string bar, which is the second value returned from some function. Okay, let's have another example, and a very common one you will see will be for looping or ignoring loop indexes. So when you're looping over a slice or an array, what you'll have is an index for each item in that slice or an array, and you'll also have the value, but you might not want to do something with the index. So let's set this up. Okay, so here I've created a slice of strings. Each one of the strings in that slice is going to be a programming language. And I just want to loop over these and print out the language. So here, this is how we would do that for I. So we get two values from range. One of them is the index, the other one is the actual value. We could have called this anything, we could have called this anything, but I'm just showing you that we get back two values, the index and the actual value itself. And say all we want to do is just print out the language. As you can see here, for the index, we're getting a red underlining, and the reason is we're not actually doing anything with that variable. And so here we should have a compile problem. So we've declared and not used I. So same solution. If we're not going to use it, let's just use a blank identifier instead, and you'll see this so many times in Go. And by doing that, we're telling Go, we don't care about this, we only care about this. And so now this should compile and it should run. So language, Go, Python, Rust. And there you've seen the two most common uses for the blank identifier. So now let's have a challenge. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to have a go at. Create a function that returns two values, a string and an integer. Call the function and use the string, ignore the integer, then call the function again and ignore the string and use the integer. So I'm pretty sure you can do this. We know how to write functions. You know how to write functions that return more than one value, and you know how to use a blank identifier. You have all the ingredients. Give this a go. Okay, so I've created a function called getUserInfo. This is going to return a string and an integer, like so. So when you're returning more than one value, we wrap them in parentheses, or we wrap the typed return types in parentheses. And then here, return Alice, which is a string, comma, and then the second value, which will be an integer, 35. And so all we need to do now is call the function. First of all, we'll use a string and ignore the integer. So the string is the first one. So we'll say name, blank identifier, get user info, and we'll print this out. So I'll print out name. And then we're going to do it again. This time we're going to ignore the name. We're going to get the age, get user info. And again, let's just print this out. So using the print line function on the format package, and this time we are printing age. So as you can see, I've got no red underlining, so everything should work here. Any values which I didn't need have been ignored using the blank identifier. Any values which I do need, I have actually used. Okay, let's run this. Go run main.go. And so for the first one, we print Alice. For the second one, we print 35. Okay, how did you get on with that one? Hope you gave it a go. Blank identifiers are something which you'll use. Okay, how did you get on with that one? Hope you gave it a go. Blank identifiers are something you'll use in every single Go program that you write. And those two are probably the two most common scenarios, or the two most common use cases. Hope you enjoyed this one. Give it a like. Make sure you subscribed. If you have a friend that's learning Go, why not share Go Bytes with them? Let's all learn together.